Porsche truly look unstoppable right now as they put up another dominant effort to keep their perfect season alive. It may not be that effort that people remember most from Laguna Seca, it may be a last lap, last corner incident that will leave people talking coming out of this race. This is your TireRack.com Monterey Sports Car Championship post-race report. Imsa was at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca once again for the fourth round of the season, and heading into the race it left many people wondering what sort of race we might see. A couple of years ago we had a race mired by full course yellows and plenty of heavy tire wear. Last year on a freshly repaved surface though, there was just a single full course caution for debris. This year's race saw it go caution free, but it certainly wasn't without a lack of incidents. Let's start off with those incidents, because there were a few significant ones that we should probably talk about. If you look at the GTP class, it seemed like pretty well every manufacturer had some sort of contact or off-course excursion at one point or another in this race. I mean, the Aston Martin Valkyrie had a tire go down. The number 60 Acura made contact with multiple cars, resulting in them having to replace their rear clip, while Cadillac, well, they had a rough day, to say the least. There were also incidents in the GTD class. The number 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin was punted off the track there, and we even saw contact on pit lane as a collision occurred with a car leaving their pit stall. However, the incident that we are going to all remember from this race came on the last corner of the last lap. Here, the number 7 Porsche Penske Motorsports 963, who to this point had won the first 3 rounds of the season, and the number 24 BMW M Team RLL were running nose to tail heading into that final turn of the final lap. This was a battle for second place. The 24 had a good run and opted to try and go around the outside of the number 7 heading into the last corner. The 2 would end up making side-to-side contact and resulted in the 24 going off track and not being able to complete that pass. Now I want to take a second and kind of dissect this incident a little bit more because I have some thoughts on it. Alright, let's take a look at the incident now, and you can see here we do have the 24 BMW here. You do have the Porsche as well, the number 7 that's tucked in behind the Pfaff Motorsports McLaren. And again, this is heading into the final corner of the final lap. So, and they're battling for second, it's worth noting. We can see here that the Porsche is still tucked in behind the Lamborghini. And you can also see that now the BMW is looking at this as very much an opportunity for them to try and make a pass around the 7 Porsche, using the Lamborghini as kind of a pick, keep them tucked in behind there, don't let them out to be able to get around it, and hopefully be able to take second place. This is where the first big sort of chunk of this occurs. We saw that the 7 made a stark move out from behind the Lamborghini and initiated contact here with the number 24 BMW. The 24 BMW did not turn into the Porsche or anything like that. We can go back and take a look at that, I suppose. But yeah, you see the number 7 makes that move outside, makes a little bit of contact there with the 24, and they continue on. The next thing that I want to point out here is keep an eye on the BMW, and I want you to keep an eye on the space that's between the side of the BMW and this curb. So when looking at this, I don't see this space really change much, which indicates that BMW isn't moving towards the curb more, but they're also not moving this way, sort of forcing the Porsche into the Lamborghini or anything like that. Actually, I'm just going to rewind here a second, but you can see as we go on, the Porsche makes that contact. BMW is holding their ground. They're actually, you can see that distance between the BMW and the curb. They're clearly moving towards the curb, and they're not moving back. They're continuing to get closer and closer to that curb. So BMW is not moving this way to initiate contact with the 7. The 7 is continuing to try and move out and push this way into sort of around the Lamborghini that they're both trying to navigate around. Now, also worth noting here is that there is contact that's made once again, a second time that the Porsche is making contact with the BMW, except the result of it this time is not quite as great as the first time around. Now, I did see people commenting that the BMW is moving back across, like to cut into the corner. They're not moving back across in this instance. Again, look at the BMW. The BMW is moving out towards the curb. The only reason why it looks like they kind of cut back across is because, as you can see in this freeze frame, like Porsche's making contact with them, and they're making contact, probably around the driver's cockpit area, and it's causing the BMW to kind of turn this way. It's just kind of like getting them loose, or just making that contact and almost, spinning them out. As this goes on, the BMW starts to slide. Like, the BMW is very much, there's contact that's being made between all three of these cars at this point. And then the BMW continues on. They get the worst of this as they, slide off. Porsche continues on, but really coming back to this was ruled as a racing incident by race control. I really don't know how BMW can be blamed at all for this. Back here, BMW is making a clear choice that, they want to keep the Porsche trapped behind the Lamborghini in this moment. The number 7 Porsche initiates this move, makes pretty hard contact with BMW. Like, that's a solid little, jolt right there. BMW goes, okay, whatever. It carries on. It's continuing over towards the curb. It never makes an effort to squeeze the 7 Porsche down onto the inside. They're giving them room. There's the Lamborghini, the FAF Lamborghini is there. And I mean, realistically, they probably have no idea that they're 3 wide at this point. But in this moment, this incident responsibility lies purely with the number 7 in my eyes. Unfortunately, the BMW was the one that really suffered from this. I think that they probably deserved second place in this race, but race control thought differently of it. And interested to hear what you guys think. I know it's a bit of a controversial incident that took place at the end of it. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Now, to me, looking at that incident, it's a pretty big slam dunk penalty. The 24 did nothing wrong here, but they really got muscled out of the way twice by the number 7 Porsche. And I know some of you are going to disagree with that. That's completely fine. I don't think it was egregious or intentional, but I do think it was deserving of a penalty. But regardless, let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Let's just make sure we keep things respectful. Now, one of the things that actually crossed my mind while this incident was taking place is, man, I hope we get to see some good photos come out of this. And speaking of photos at the track, if you find yourself at the track with your camera, then I'd suggest checking out Paddock Focus Photography Workshops. You're already familiar with the work that Paddock Focus co-host Jamie Price does. You see his work all the time on this channel, including in this video. So now you can learn from him and fellow sports car racing photographer Drew Gibson from the comfort of your home. They even have a special guide focusing solely on the 24 hours of Le Mans, which last time I checked is right around the corner. Even better for Off in the S's viewers, you can get 10% off any of the workshops by using promo code S's at paddockfocus.teachable.com or click the first link in the description. Again, that's promo code S's at Paddock Focus Photography Workshops. A huge thank you to Jamie Price and Paddock Focus for supporting the show. Now, there weren't just plenty of incidents, but there were plenty of other notes that I wanted to discuss coming out of this race. We're going to start off with GTP and Aston Martin. Honestly, I think the Aston Martin just had another really solid race. They had solid pace. They sure didn't have the pace to go out and win this race, but they also didn't have the pace like they were falling off the back of the field either. They were just respectable, and if it hadn't been for that cut tire that they had midway through the race, then I think they would have been able to finish right up there with some of the other GTP class competitors. Another solid weekend from them as they continue to learn and further develop that car. When it comes to Cadillac, though, I would say things are not quite as positive. Honestly, I think the alarm bells might be starting to ring in the Cadillac stable. After all, this is a track they won at in 2023. They finished second at last year, but this weekend, their pace was nowhere to be found across their 3 entries. It honestly makes you take a step back and really look at where this drop-off in performance came from. Is this a case of they've just let some of the other manufacturers improve with the development of their car and they haven't kept up? Or is this just a rough patch that they're working through with a new team coming into the picture? It all kind of remains to be seen. What we know for sure, though, is that a 6th, a 7th, and an 8th place finish for Cadillac at a track that has historically been strong for them is not something they're going to be happy about. And they will need a big turnaround in Detroit if they want to try and claw their way into the championship fight. Acura was a bit difficult to get a read on this weekend, I thought. They definitely leaned closer to the pace that Cadillac was ultimately showing in the race, but ultimately they were able to keep it all together for a 5th place finish. On top of that, I do think that Acura's strongest tracks have still yet to come this season. I think they're more in the second half of the season. And with Meyer-Shank Racing still getting a read back on the program and everything, I'm more willing to give them a break than I am to Cadillac. After all, let's not forget, Acura does have that 2nd place finish for the Rolex, where Cadillac still doesn't have a podium to their name. A manufacturer that has plenty of podiums to their name this year is BMW, and I'll acknowledge that I was a little bit critical of BMW coming into this race with how things ended up turning out at Long Beach. After all, they sat on pole for the first 3 rounds of the season and were unable to convert those into a win. I mean, I guess that trend kind of continued this weekend. The 24 still keeps their pole streak alive. That's 4 in a row. But in not being able to convert it into a win this weekend, I don't know, I don't really want to place as much of the blame on BMW in this one. I honestly think that they just fell victim to Porsche and their incredible pace this weekend. I mean, you want to look at the reason that cost them out Long Beach, which was the pit stop. They had some great pit stops this weekend, and ultimately, it was virtually the same time that they spent on pit road as the Porsches. I think it ended up being like a second difference. And even though Porsche were really, really quick in the middle stints of this race, Dries Vanthoor in that last stint, he reeled in a 14-second deficit to claw his way up into a nose-to-tail battle with the Porsches in the final laps. BMW certainly had the pace to win this race, but unlike at Long Beach, they didn't really do anything wrong, in my opinion, in this one. Porsche just executed flawlessly, and I have a hard time docking BMW for something that they didn't really have that much control in. You can't control if Porsche is going to go out there and run virtually a flawless race, except for one little bit of contact that they made. Overall, we're 4 rounds into the season for BMW. They're sitting 3rd and 4th in the championship standings, and if you were to have told them that a year ago, they would be pleased. Overall, a good weekend for BMW. If they keep doing this, that win is going to come eventually. But then there's Porsche, and without a doubt, Porsche continued their dominant season. It wasn't a runaway race for them, but it was still a very strong, I would still call it a dominant race. They played the undercut to perfection on that first round of pit stops to be able to snag the lead from BMW. And then really the rest of the race they played out to perfection. They managed the pace, they managed the traffic well, they managed their team cars well, and I would say that they ran virtually a 4th race in a row that was flawless. And with yet another 1-2 finish in this race, the narrative is quickly shifting from who is going to be able to catch them and who is going to be able to contend for the championship with them to which Porsche are we looking at winning the championship. In this round at Laguna Seca, though, it was the number 7 Porsche Penske Motorsports 963 of Matt Campbell and Mathieu Jaminet, beating out the sister number 7 Porsche, who would hang on with it from that late race incident with the 24 to finish 2nd. The podium would be rounded off by the 24 BMW. In GTD Pro, there's a couple of things that I wanted to touch on. First off, we saw more great battles unfold in this race. It started off not so great with the number 48 BMW, who started 2nd in class, picking up a drive-through penalty for changing lanes before the start-finish line. Honestly, this is just a silly, unforced error from Paul Miller Racing. We've seen a penalty like this cost teams almost every time when it happens. Even though it's early in the race, an early race drive-through penalty can just drain the energy out of you. And really for the 48 here, it's a shame because they had a lightning quick car. If you take away that drive-through penalty and there not being a full course yellow at any point in this race to kind of make up for it and bunch up the field, if you take away that penalty, then they're probably at least in solid contention for a podium, if not for the win. Instead, for the 48, it turned out to be a 5th place finish. Not the end of the world, but it could have been so much more for this car. We saw many other cars step up and show solid pace though. In the early going, the number 81 Ferrari looked like the class of the field and jumped out to a solid lead. The number 3 Pratt Miller Corvette, they looked solid all race long, and actually all weekend long for that matter. And for the first time all season, Pfaff walked away with a solid finish after crossing the line in 4th, just behind the Corvette. However, it was AO Racing and Roxy this weekend that stepped up, and they really took control of this race after the first round of pit stops. They grabbed the race lead and they did not look back. AO Racing and Roxy, featuring Klaus Bachler and Lauren Heinrich, would go on to win their second GTD Pro race in a row, and factoring in their GTD class win at Long Beach brings their winning streak to 3. The pole-sitting number 81 Dragon Speed Ferrari would settle for second, with the number 3 Corvette just hanging on to that final podium spot in 3rd. And then there's GTD, honestly a class that in today's broadcast seemed to be a bit of an afterthought. Especially when we consider how close the top 2 were for most of that race. I'm really surprised we didn't get more coverage of the GTD class. But anyways, just like as it was in the GTD Pro class, there were a few cars that separated themselves in GTD from the rest. The 32 Korthoff Mercedes started on pole, and they were in the running all day. And we can't have an Imsa race without talking about the 12 Vassar Sullivan Lexus. They looked strong as well. Coming away from this race, I think many people are wondering, what could have been for the 36 DXDT Corvette. They were hit in the pits from a car that was being released from their pit stall, and they weren't ultimately able to complete service on their car. So since they had to make a second trip down pit road a few laps later to actually complete that pit stop, they would fall a lap down. They'd never be able to recover from that, with there being no full course yellows, and ultimately it kept them mired down in the running order for the entirety of this race. In the end though, it was the 57 Windward Racing Mercedes of Philippe Ellis and Russell Ward who slowly made their way up through the GTD field from their 5th place starting spot to take the win. It's their second win in a row at Laguna Seca, and it's actually worth noting that all 3 of the cars that won their classes here this year also won last year. Crossing the line in second was the 12 Vassar Sullivan Lexus, with the number 34 Conquest Racing Ferrari coming in 3rd. Before we get to the point standings, I just want to quickly touch on my biggest surprise and disappointment from this weekend in each class. In GTP, I'm actually going to loop my biggest surprise and disappointment kind of together into one here, because it's clearly Cadillac. I am shocked and also extremely disappointed in the speed that they showed this weekend. This is a manufacturer that I think had very high hopes coming into this year. And they boast 3 very strong and competitive driver lineups, but were far from being competitive in this race. They need to turn things around fast before this is a completely lost season for them. In GTD Pro, I wasn't expecting Pfaff to have the pace that they did this weekend, but they were a pleasant surprise. They pick up yet another solid Laguna Seca finish, and this is really a solid result that they needed to take the bad taste out of their mouth from the first 2 poor results that they had this year. Let's see if they can try and ride some of this momentum into the summer. On the flip side though, Ford was nowhere to be found this weekend. After a strong Rolex and a solid run at Sebring, the GTD Pro points leaders didn't have any pace at Laguna Seca. They're going to be looking to turn things around and jump right back up into the championship fight with a solid run at Detroit next time out. In GTD, and I guess this also applies to GTD Pro as well, perhaps the biggest pleasant surprise was the pace that Ferrari showed this weekend. The 34 Conquest Racing Ferrari would start in 8th place, but they slowly worked their way up through the race and ended up walking away with it with a strong podium finish. Between them and the effort that Dragon Speed put forward as well, this was a solid weekend for Ferrari. A disappointment in GTD though was Turner Motorsports. This is a team and a car that has done really well here in the M4 era, having finished 2nd in class the last 2 years and adding a 3rd place finish in 2022. They just didn't have the pace this weekend, as they would go on to start and finish the race in 9th. Check out the point standings now, presented by P1 Web Development. If you're looking for a custom website, then look no further than P1 Web Development. You can check them out by clicking the link in the description or heading to p1webdevelopment.com. In GTP, it's number 7, Porsche Penske Motorsports 963, that leads the way with 1,490 points. That's a 91-point lead over the number 6, Porsche Penske 963. The closest non-Porsche is the number 24 BMW, who are 280 points behind the leaders. The number 25 BMW is in 4th, and rounding out the top 5 is the number 31 Whelen Engineering Cadillac. In GTD Pro, it's number 77 AO Racing Porsche that leads the way with 1,014 points. That's a 70-point advantage over the number 3 Corvette Racing entry, and a 75-point lead over the 81 Dragon Speed Ferrari. The number 4 Multimatic Motorsports Mustang is in 4th place, and rounding out the top 5 is a tie between the 2 Paul Miller Racing BMWs. In GTD, it's number 57 Windward Racing Mercedes that leads the way with 1,372 points. That's a 124-point advantage over the number 12 Vassar Sullivan Lexus. The number 120 Wright Motorsports Porsche is in 3rd. The number 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin is in 4th, and rounding out the top 5 is the number 96 Turner Motorsports BMW. Overall, I thought this round at WeatherTech Racing Laguna Seca was a great one. And let me know what your thoughts on the race were in the comments below, or go and check out the poll on the YouTube posts tab, and let me know if it was a good race. We're going to have more Imsa racing later this month when they hit the streets of Detroit. But until then, make sure you're caught up on all of your April Imsa news with this video. Huge shout out to all the channel supporters. If you too want to support the show, you can head to patreon.com/offinthe-s's or click that join button below. Once again, thanks for tuning in. I hope everyone has a great race weekend and doesn't go off in the S's.